We all love our homes. However, an illness, the loss of a spouse, and/or safety issues may require moving on. It is for that reason that senior housing is a huge topic, and the need for housing by older adults is only going to get bigger. Having said that, where can one find housing that provides affordable support services for seniors and adults with disabilities who no longer want to live alone but still maintain their independence? What type of support services are available to residents in these housing communities? How does such a place combine privacy and companionship? What are the qualification requirements for entering such affordable housing? Are these types of affordable housing communities available throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Hello, my name is Attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, and welcome to Your Money, Your Life. In this segment called Moving On, my guest and I will discuss the details of congregate housing. My guest is Melissa Donnegan of Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley. Melissa, welcome to Your Money, Your Life. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's get right into the heart of it. Tell us, what is congregate housing? I have asked friends of mine if they've ever heard of it, and they've said no. So tell us, what is it?
Congregate housing is a non-medical model out within housing authorities. It's independent living with some added support, such as meals provided, and most importantly, social interaction and companionship.
Okay. Do people have their own apartments in congregate housing, or are they just roommates, or how, give us some of the details.
One of our sites is more of a studio apartment with a kitchenette and a sink in their bathroom. All of our other sites are more of just a bedroom, and they share common spaces like the kitchen, the TV room, and meals are provided family style.
Okay. Now, someone who's interested in congregate housing, do they have to meet any specific requirements with regards to age, finances, health?
Yes. They have to be over 60 years of age. However, if they're disabled, they can live in the congregate housing if they're under 60. The income requirements are set by the housing authorities right around $43,000 per year. There's no asset limit. The housing authorities would look at 1% of assets to include that into the income. And medically, we look for someone who is not too medically frail, but with some added supports could safely live in the congregate with the services, the elder services of the Merrimack Valley could provide.
Okay. Is there a requirement that somebody be examined medically before they can go into congregate housing?
There's not a medical exam necessary. However, we do send a physician summary off to the primary care physician, and we do look for their input to see if congregate housing is suitable for the applicant, and we do ask for them to sign off on that.
What if the applicant has mild dementia? Is that a problem?
You know, we would look at the severity of their memory and where they're at. We would not want somebody wandering around the congregate. That would be certainly unsafe for them, or leaving on a stove, and that would put residents in the entire building at risk. If somebody could, manage with some supports, like I said, we would look to see how their memory impairment would affect them living there.
Okay, so the answer is that as long as they can live safely, they can go into congregate housing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any specific goals that the congregate housing has for its residents?
Certainly, we would look at hopefully preventing altogether, if not prolonging, nursing home placement. It's a great alternative for someone who doesn't quite need a nursing home, perhaps can't afford an assisted living, but living on their own all day long is no longer an option for them. It also provides great companionship for somebody who's socially isolated, perhaps doesn't have transportation means to get to a senior center during the day, or perhaps just wouldn't reach out on their own. So there are people around all the time for them to interact with, and that's a really nice benefit.
Sure, that is a great benefit. Congregate housing, is it fair to say that that's pretty much independent living, where people are living independently without any assistance?
It certainly is independent. We even have some congregate residents currently who still drive. They are free to come and go and have visitors.
If you have a resident who needs some form of in-home care. Can that be arranged, and if so, how so?
Absolutely. VNA services, folks can have VNA services coming in, and that would be the skilled care, because as I mentioned, Congregate is a non-medical model. So there are no nurses on staff. Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley could also provide the home care services they would need, such as homemaking, personal care, companionship, things like that, and meals are also provided at the Congregate sites.
Is there any provision for transportation, or somebody can no longer drive? Or do you have to be able to drive to live at Congregate housing?
You certainly do not need to be able to drive. So within our community resources, we would look at some transportation in the community that's offered, such as the MVRTA. Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley has volunteer transportation. Some towns, the Councils on Aging, are wonderful about providing transportation to appointments, or they'll have scheduled shopping trips available to the residents.
Now, is there a process whereby each resident is screened and determined what level of services that they actually may need in Congregate housing?
Absolutely.
And if so, can you tell us about that?
Yes. So each Congregate housing has a Congregate coordinator who actually works at Elder Services. They're a social worker, case manager. They would assess the applicant at the point when they're applying for Congregate to see at that point if they need services. Not all of our residents have services, so they would monitor that over time. However, if someone applying for Congregate, once they move in, they need the services, the Congregate coordinator would assess that and would set those services up. And Elder Services has their own guidelines for being eligible for home care services.
Okay, all right. That's good to know. Now let's talk a little bit about social activities. Does Congregate housing organize any social activities, or are the residents off on their own and have to come up with their own social activities?
Yes, so each site is a little different, but at most of the sites we have things like a blood pressure clinic once a month, a minister or a priest might come in once a month. We have hairdressers that come in usually on a weekly basis to each of the sites. And of course, with the holidays coming up, holiday events are put together for them. We'll have in-services. If there's a topic that they're interested in, we can have some sort of in-service or training or information session. Some of the sites have coffee hour twice a week. You know, the residents will get together informally and play cards and games. But we also empower them if there's something that they really want to put together. We'll help support them and with their ideas.
Okay. Now, the residents that live in Congregate housing, they have to pay a monthly rent. It's a landlord-tenant relationship, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they pay 30% of their income to the housing authority.
Okay, you've anticipated my question.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. So the rent that they will pay is 30% of their net income, and then if they have significant assets, is it more than 30%?
No. The housing authority would process their application. They would be the ones to look at their income and deem them eligible. They do landlord references and background checks. So that's the housing authority's piece of the application, while Elder Services brings them out on the tour, gets the physicians sign off, and does our assessment.
Does a resident sign a lease with the housing authority? Is that the relationship? It's a lease?
They do, yes. If they're approved to move in, at that point they contact the housing authority to sign a lease and pick a move-in date. And once they move in, Elder Services would provide the case management for that resident. And
does the lease contain any rules and regulations governing the conduct of the residents? And specifically, I'm thinking of things like pets, visitation, smoking, noise.
Correct. All of that is addressed in the lease. We only have one site at this point that smoking and pets are allowed actually in the resident's apartment. They would talk about even just cordial behavior and living with others, and what's to be expected of them living there, and what would be not acceptable behavior.
And what happens in the event, and I'm sure this happens in every situation where you have people living close together, what happens in a situation where you have disputes amongst residents? Is there a process to handle that?
Yeah, there certainly is. The Congregate sites have house meetings, some weekly, some as necessary. The Congregate coordinator is out at the sites on a weekly basis, visiting the residents. They really get to know them quite well. At that point, if there's an ongoing conflict or dispute, a mediation would be done with a Congregate coordinator, and we would sort of go from there. If behaviors continue to escalate, the housing authority would then get involved. But the coordinator really does a good job of trying to de-escalate the situation and just deal with it before it gets too big.
I'm presuming that the ultimate remedy on behalf of the housing authority will be to evict the resident. Is that right?
Well, if it got to the point where people were in danger, or if the individual's behavior was quite extreme. But I have to say the housing authorities we work with are really fantastic, and eviction is absolutely the last on everybody's list. It's the last option. So we really exhaust all resources before that would be discussed.
Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier that the rent that the resident pays is 30% of his or her net income. Does that include all of the services that you discussed earlier, or is that a cost above and beyond? That
is a cost above and beyond. So their phone and their cable would be an additional cost. All of our sites offer a meal program. Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley contracts with vendors in the community. They provide the homemaking. They clean up the common areas at the Congregate, and they provide the meals. Each site, some of them only have 1 meal a day, some have 3. So that is an additional cost. If the resident chooses to participate in the meal program, each site has a weekly cost. So the resident would then pay the homemaker who shops and cooks for the entire Congregate. In addition, if they have home care services through Elder Services, we are on a sliding fee scale based on their income. So they would have a co-payment depending where their income is. They might not have a co-payment, they might only have a voluntary donation, or they might have a set amount every month that they would pay for the additional services they would need for us, personal care, homemaking, doing their laundry, things like that.
Okay. So since Congregate is really just a landlord-tenant relationship and really nothing medical, an elderly person's Medicare coverage is not going to get involved in paying for Congregate?
No, Medicare does not.
Okay. Would Mass Health, which is Massachusetts Medicaid, would it help pay for any of the in-home services that are provided through an in-home agency?
Absolutely. So we would, if one of the residents had Mass Health, they could get the services through Elder Services at no cost. Okay. Depending on their type of Mass Health. There's many types.
Of course. And of course, some people don't even qualify for Mass Health because their assets and their income are such that they don't qualify for Mass Health. So it really depends on what you do. Now, before somebody goes into Congregate housing, does Congregate housing require that the resident have in place legal documents like, let's say, a power of attorney or a health care proxy, or not? No, we would not require that. Okay. No. So now if someone is interested in Congregate housing, if they've watched this program or they've seen any of your leaflets or anything, whom do they contact, and how do they learn more about Congregate housing?
The intake and referral process starts with Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley, calling our age information department. We would take a Congregate referral. One of the Congregate coordinators would receive that referral, contact the applicant or a family member. Perhaps they're living in a nursing home. Whoever it told us to contact, we would reach out to them. And the first step is always to provide a tour. They could see the sites that have the vacancies. They could see every site. If the site that they prefer is on a wait list, we would still tour them. And that's a nice opportunity for them to see the shared living environment, see if they like the setup, and if it's something they're interested in. We would then proceed with our paperwork, and at the same time they would need to start applying to the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority at times will also reach out to us and say, we received an application on this person. We think they might be a good fit for Congregate. Would you like to take a look at them? So we would then tour that applicant. So it's kind of twofold. Also, case managers at Elder Services would have clients living in the community that they might feel Congregate would be a great fit for them. So they could make what's called an internal referral just within Elder Services. So we really feel strongly that the tour is very important for us to start to get to know the applicant, for them to get to see the environment. We also invite the applicant out for a second time to have lunch or tea with the current residents, you know, so they can start to get to know them and ask the residents really what it's like to live there, what they like about living there.
You know, I think that's a great idea, because, you know, a prospective resident, I'm sure, would like to be able to talk to current residents and ask them, what do you like, what don't you like,
Yes.
you know, what do you like most, what do you like least, that sort of thing. So that person can make what I would call an informed decision and say, okay, I can make this decision based on having talked to somebody who actually lives there, who's experienced living there, and has given me the pros and cons. So I think that's really important, that they have a lunch or a tea or something and be able to sit down and ask that questions.
And their family members are welcome to come with them as well, because a lot of the adult children are very involved with the process. The application process sort of happens in two stages, sort of at the same time. The Housing Authority would really deal with the income in terms of the guidelines set for Housing Authority, and do the landlord references and the background check, while Elder Services reaches out to the physician, does their assessment, looks at what kind of supports the person might need. There actually is then a team of people that meet called the Multidisciplinary Assessment Team, and they as a group decide whether the applicant will be approved to move in or if they will be denied.
What is the reason for denial?
It could be that they're too medically frail for the Congregate, and even with home care support services, their needs would just be too extreme for what we could really handle. On the Housing Authority side, if their income was too high, if they had a bad landlord reference, certainly their background check would be looked at, and the Housing Authority makes those decisions, and them being the landlord, if any of those areas don't pan out, then they would deny the applicant.
Okay, so let's consider for a moment that you have someone who's interested in congregate housing. They've dealt with Elder Services, and there's an issue of frailty. Let's also say that they've dealt with the Housing Authority, and there's an issue of too much income. Will Elder Services help steer this person towards a different type of housing, understanding that this person, I mean, let's be honest, as people get older, housing becomes a very major issue.
Yes.
So will you help them steer them, or are they on their own?
No, they are never on their own with Elder Services. We still always offer a tour. We like to give everyone a fair shot through the entire process. At that point, it might turn into sharing resources about other housing options. We could stay involved and help them navigate the system with different housing options, or just send them out resources or meet with them, and they can, you know, sort of take the ball from that point.
Now, if you have a person that's interested in congregate housing, and let's consider that they qualify, they're not too frail, and you know, financially they meet all of the Housing Authority's guidelines, but they need some help moving. Is there a way to help them in terms of making the move into congregate housing, or are they on their own?
Yeah. We would not offer to move everybody in. If they have the means to pay for a mover, if they have family members who are able to help them move in.
Now let's talk a little bit about the record-keeping procedures with regards to congregate housing. I don't know this, so I'm going to presume for a minute that since the government is involved, there has to be some significant record-keeping. Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of procedures that are involved in terms of the records that have to be kept on residents, and the type of information that they're required to keep?
Yearly, they need to show their income to the Housing Authority and work on that piece with the Housing Authority. That's separate. Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley, any interaction we have with a client is documented. We have a database, so any home visit that's done, any phone call, anything we assist the resident with, we would document that. And depending what program and what type of services the resident gets from us, additional home visits would be done, and we keep our assessment tool on them in our database, and any other documentation we would have is updated on a yearly basis, their care plan and their medications, etc. So it's sort of twofold. The Housing Authority has their information and documentation, income verifications that they keep, and Elder Services, depending if they get services or not.
What do you mean? You mentioned the term care plan. What do you mean by a care plan?
So those would be the services that we would provide if somebody was to be a home care client in addition to being a Congregate resident. Home health aid, personal care, homemaking, companionship. Perhaps a few days a week they go to an adult day health center. So if they are receiving those services through Elder Services, that would be their care plan.
Okay, that's their care plan. And that's something that Elder Services prepares, the care plan?
Correct.
Okay, and does the resident and or family members have any input into that care plan?
Oh, absolutely. We are big on being consumer driven. Of course, budget constraints often hold us back from giving what we would love to give every elder in the community. So we would look at what program they qualify for and what we're able to give them, ask them their preference, the days or the times in each day that they would prefer those services.
Now, talking about, back up to the services for a moment, let's say that when the first care plan is created, when the resident first moves in, the resident needs, hypothetically, some housekeeping services. Beyond that is okay. The resident's health declines and starts to need more services. Can they get more services, or are they stuck with that initial care plan?
Oh yes, no, absolutely they can get more. That's why our Congregate coordinators are also trained as home care case managers, and they can help them navigate all different programs, and they would conduct home visits on a weekly, monthly basis and really monitor the client to see, as their needs change, what more we can help them with.
Okay. Now let's consider for a minute that you have somebody that moves into Congregate housing who's 60 or older, and as I mentioned in the last scenario, the health declines. Can someone's health decline to the point where they no longer qualify to live in Congregate housing? And if indeed that does happen, then where do they go? What do they do? Where does it go from there, in other words?
Yes, certainly if someone's medical frail needs got to the point where even with our home care services, either we couldn't provide enough or they just were not safe living in an environment where there was not supervision, again, we would help them navigate the system and look if assisted living would be a better option for them, nursing home placement, or if a family member could take them in and be there with them to provide that supervision. But again, we wouldn't evict or just say you're no longer appropriate, pack your belongings.
Okay.
The Congregate coordinator would work with the resident and or their family at, placing them. And
would the Congregate coordinator make a specific referral? Let's say to a nursing home, you had mentioned a nursing home, let's say the person that becomes so frail needed 24-hour around-the-clock nursing care. Would that referral be made, or would the resident and the family have to select a nursing home of their own?
They would select. We would give all the information. We would give them a list of every nursing facility, let them, again, tour, speak with admissions, and find a facility that they feel meets their needs.
Okay. So to recap, Congregate housing is subsidized. The government subsidizes that.
Through the Housing Authority, yeah.
You have to be at least 60 years of age, or you have to be disabled. And I'm assuming disabled is defined as disabled under the Social Security rules. Is that correct?
Disabled, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. You can't be too frail. You have to be able to live independently. And there are certain income guidelines that you have to meet.
Yes.
Have I missed anything, or is that basically in a nutshell what Congregate housing is?
In a nutshell.
Okay, and then you have your own apartment, but you also share space with others and you socialize with others who live in that same community.
Correct.
which, again, I think is a really good thing because people need social interaction and they don't really have to go anywhere to get that. They have it right there on the premises.
Yes, yes.
And then they can get services if they want, but they have to pay extra for those services.
Correct, yes, through elder services.
Housing can be an especially difficult problem as we age. Therefore, preparing for relocation is essential. In so doing, consider all of your options as realistically as possible. For some people, one such option is congregate housing. As Melissa Donnegan explained, congregate housing is multi-unit housing with support services for seniors and for adults with disabilities who do not want to live alone. It combines privacy and companionship by offering each resident a private bedroom or apartment, shared living space, activities, and the social support of other residents. Also, congregate housing offers support services to help residents remain independent. Support services may include meals, transportation, housekeeping, laundry, grocery shopping, emergency response, and social activities. Arranging these services is dependent on the congregate coordinator's evaluation of the resident's needs. To assure that congregate housing is affordable, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts provides the necessary funding to maintain housing for seniors and adults with disabilities in communities throughout Massachusetts. State-funded congregate housing is for people who meet the following 6 requirements. First, they are age 60 or older or disabled. Second, can live independently with support services. Third, do not require 24-hour supervision or care. Fourth, meet eligibility requirements for public or subsidized housing. Fifth, want to live in a shared living arrangement with other adults. And sixth, do not have disruptive behaviors that would interfere with the rights of other residents. As we learned today, each congregate housing arrangement is different, and support services may vary from one housing facility to another. We also learned that medical care is not included in congregate housing. Therefore, Medicare does not cover the cost. However, home health services can usually be arranged, and this extra cost may be covered by MassHealth. As regards the rent paid, this usually amounts to 30% of an eligible person's net income. As regards applying for congregate housing, this can be done through Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley or a local housing agency. When application is made through Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley, the applicant will be given further information about the congregate housing program as well as other housing options. In closing, I would like to thank my guest, Melissa Donnegan of Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley, for her participation in this program. And as always, thank you to you, our viewers, for watching Your Money, Your Life. My name is Attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, building your trust.